Good morning. It's such a gorgeous day. We got to take advantage of these gorgeous days. They're gifts from Hashem before the big winter comes. And, every life has a big winter, right? There's a question about when the righteous fall. We learned recently about Samson, who was called a gibor, a hero of war. He gave his life for the Jewish people. It's a famous story. Everyone knows the story of Samson. He fell for a Philistine woman, beautiful woman, seduced him, turned him into her bosses. She made a lot of money. He got his eyes poked out, put in prison, and eventually he was taken to the temple of one of the Philistine gods. We try not to say their names, but you could look it up. And he was able with his strength to pull down the pillars of the temple. Many idol worshippers, people who really hated the Jews and wanted to bring down the monotheistic concept of God and the Jewish representation of that concept. They wanted to bring it down and kill him. Anyways, what's important to us is, how did this guy fall? Samson was a judge. Now, a judge means he learned Torah a long time. He was inundated, saturated with Torah. He was a master of the Kabbalistic arts. You know, the famous story, Samson killed 10,000 people with the jawbone of a donkey. What do you think, that was a regular jawbone? The Kabbalah teaches us that he had God's names engraved on it. And that gave this piece of bone a lot more power than he could swing it left or right. And Samson, he fell because of a woman? Love of a woman? Really? You know, men that spend their lives serving God are not easily seduced. They're not like your average, construction worker on a weekend off. These men were at the height of spiritual power. He was sanctified from the womb. He never drank wine. He never grew his hair. He was a Nazirite. Do we think he really fell for a woman? Well, the rabbis teach that no, Samson was forced by God to fall to the level of being seduced, forced by God, led by God, for the sake of the Jewish people. Why? Because he would bring the turnaround in the nation. His death in the temple of idol worship, of idolatry, his death would be a sanctification of God's name for that generation and every generation that came after him. Because God knew the people were going to serve the idols anyways. And he wanted the people to understand the self-destruction that's brought. And Samson's parents, Manoach and his wife, who were prophets, they received an angel. They were spoken to by the angel of God. That makes them a prophet, you know. They didn't know at first why their son had fallen for that Philistine woman that knew that found out the secret of Samson's strength. Of course, the strength was that he was a Nazir and he didn't cut his hair. Now, the hair on a man's head is considered power. It's considered gevurah, but it's unsweetened power. It's not power that's been fixed, if you will, tempered by mercy. It's not power that is in the vessels of kindness. It's power that is chaotic and destructive. So don't think you're just going to grow out your hair and get some power. Some of us, well, it's a little late for that. But, you know, the power of the Nazir is the power of God in vessels. And Samson, well, his job, his mission, he was one of the greatest of his generation. Spiritually, obviously, physically. But he still was in a generation that needed a turnaround, a generation that needed that example of sacrifice for a higher cause, the people themselves. To save the generation, you know, if you save one man, it's as if you save a world, the Talmud teaches us. What about if you save a whole generation? If you turn around just the people in your life? Or how about ourselves? Are we ready to turn around? On the middle of the road, we turn around. You know, here I am walking up and down this dirt road in Gush Etzion. I gotta watch out for the rocks. Sometimes we don't feel like turning around. But you know, when you turn around, see, the sky turns blue. We see something else. We see hope. We see purpose. We see meaning. And we can leave our idolatries behind. Today, the idolatry is much more subtle than it was back then because it's woven into the vessels of physicality, into the relationships we have with math, with science, with money, with leaders, with our own conception of ourselves. And Samson, he died so that other people could learn about a path that starts as simple as, you know, you meet a woman in a bar and you end up in the temple of idolatry. And you wonder how that happened? It doesn't take long. And men are susceptible. I think nowadays women are too. And why do we need to serve that idol? For physical pleasure? Is that really what our lives are worth? Another moment of physical pleasure to replace the emptiness of not finding the true and one living being of this universe that inhabits the deepest places of our souls? God should bless us with the clarity of the vision of the sages about Samson. That we shouldn't have to go and destroy the temples of idolatry. They will be destroyed by themselves. So we should all take note of Samson's true journey. It was for us, it was for all people. That the Torah teaches that, you know, a man will be blinded by his eyes and he will be seduced by the beauty of these things in this world. Why did God make them? To test us? No, to give us the merit of becoming divine beings. Because that's what a human being is when he follows the law of God. He becomes a divine being. We should all reach that goal as soon as possible. God bless.